Coming up next on All About Android, it's me, Jason Howell. We got Florence Ion and our guest returning to the show, Matteo Doni. We talk about the Play Store's new walled garden approach to apps. Very interesting stuff going on there. We've got a first look, or Matteo has a first look at the Doogee X96 phone. Also, Flo has a review of the Huawei MatePad Pro. AT&T is committing to Android messages on its Android phones. Pokémon Go keeps going big. Your email and a whole lot more next on All About Android.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Hello and welcome to All About Android, episode 532, recorded on Tuesday, July 6th, 2021. Your weekly source for latest news, hardware, and apps for the Android faithful. I'm Jason Howell.
And I'm Florence Ion,
What's
filling
up?
in for Ron Soul.
For Ron Soul. Ron's still with us. His
right,
soul
but
is...
I'm filling in for him, and our guest today is filling in for me.
Oh, wow. That's way more confusing than I thought it went, but...
You know what? That's me, baby. I'm confusing. What can I say?
And that's why we love you, Flo.
Evolution.
Joining us in, I can't tell if it's Ron or Flo's place, is Matteo Doni, Tech Travel Geeks, youtube.com/Tech Travel Geeks. How's it going, Matteo?
Very well. Thanks for having me back on the show.
Absolutely.
It's been a while, but we're ready to talk about Android and what's been happening in the week. Maybe some goats as well. We'll see.
Well, we already have some goats in your lower third. It's goat culture opinionist. So this just, you keep ramping this up, ratcheting it up. It began as a joke. Now it's your livelihood.
It is. And this is the big goat industry. It's what will make us build back better.
Yeah, it's the next big tech. If big tech is now, big goat is later.
It's the greatest of all time.
Yeah, that's true. It is that
Once
too.
we've broken up big tech, we can rebuild big goat.
Although you might have to be careful about antitrust and all that with big goat. You know, once all eyes are on you, you're in the crosshairs, and you gotta be careful. So it's one thing that we've learned from big tech anyways. It is great to have you back, Matteo. Thank you for hopping on. I know it's late, but you keep saying that it's not too late and that it's all right. But I kind of have a hard time believing it because I know that it's 1:30 in the morning right now as we start. And we have a full show and a Q&A to do for Club TWiT members after the show. So thank you for sacrificing your sleep for us once again. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Well, why don't we go right into the news?
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. I see what you did there.
Oh, I know.
Gardens without walls, but with goats. There's Android news.
There we go. It doesn't make any sense. Don't even try to make sense of that. Except, Flo, this story might make a little sense of it.
Well, because when we talk about Apple, we usually talk about the walled garden. And I'm really, really sorry to say this, but I am starting to see some very large bushes being put up around the Play Store.
Like junipers, the really tall ones that will light up if lit on fire.
Oh, that's a terrible analogy to put in California right now, Jason.
That's why we got rid of. That's why we got rid of our junipers.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. That's all we got on the mind right now. It's that time of year. But okay, what we've also got on our minds is the fact that in August there's going to be some app publishing changes for app developers that are submitting new apps to the Play Store. So developers will be required to publish Android app bundles instead of the usual APK files. These bundles are going to be in the .aab file format. That's the new Android app package, essentially. And this, again, will only apply to new apps that are submitted to the Play Store beginning in August, though Google wrote a little blog post just to kind of remind developers that it's time to start developing towards those app bundles. Google actually assembles the files in the cloud for those app bundles. And this is essentially what gives Google the keys to distribute that app, right? So they have all the little pieces. They can put it together in a nice puzzle. or rather, it's like when you hire a company to come put together furniture at your house, maybe, possibly. Except this furniture can only be put together with screwdrivers in Google's kit.
Oh,
so that's how you think about that. So Google calls this process Google Play app signing. Kind of, same idea when you're trying to do something encrypted in a safe way, right? Devs, they can still download the signed distribution APKs from the Google Play Developer Console if they want to put their apps in other Android app stores. And when we talk about those, of course, we're talking about the direct rival, I guess you could say, which would be the Amazon App Store. Now, Android app bundles, they're not new. They actually debuted in Android 9, and part of that move was to try to get app developers to make smaller apps so that it would not be so complicated to install on low memory or budget phones. And, not for nothing, these app bundles actually cut about 15% on the app size, which is going to be helpful too for Google because they're trying to cut some of their costs on bandwidth. And when you're serving petabytes of data every time somebody's installing or pinging for the app, that's going to add up on Google's end. But the other unfortunate flip side of all of this is that it creates a sort of proprietary nature to these app bundles. Think of them as zip files that could only be, an archived file that could only be unbundled with a special key, and Google's the one that holds that key. Basically means that outside of the Play Store, you have to find a different way of distributing the app. Again, the idea is supposed to be simplify these apps for the Play Store because they won't have all the bloat of language packs and localization data that is dependent on your location and all that. So it should make for lighter apps all around. But again, it's going to make it a little harder for those third-party stores. Now, I'm wondering from you, Jason and Matteo, and for those who are watching us live and chiming in the chat, do you all feel like this is a buttoning down of the Play Store? I am personally just kind of sniffing around this. When we get to the hardware section, we'll talk about tablet that I looked at that doesn't have the Play Store. And I ran into a lot of issues because of this app bundle requirement. A lot of the really big app publishers already use it. So Spotify, for instance, is one of them that uses it, again, because they want to cut down on the app bundle so they don't have to have all those localized files for all the regions they're in. And I couldn't get it installed on the Huawei MatePad. I guess I just gave it away.
That's okay.
I'm wondering
it's a tease.
What you guys think.
Tease forward. Well, yes, I'm curious to know what how you feel about this, Matteo. Just real quick, I should mention APK Mirror has been around for quite a while. It's the APK kind of marketplace is the wrong word, but basically it's done by the folks at Android Police, where they basically have a stockpile and reference previous versions of apps and their APK files. They, not too long ago, began to support app bundles through through an app that that I think is called the APK Mirror Installer for Android, and it's smart enough to kind of put these together as well. So the Play Store is not the definitive only place, but if you want your app to be distributed in the most popular place that Android apps are distributed, it has to be the Play Store, and that has to be an app bundle. And
depends on the device.
Oh, yeah.
Depends on the
device.
No
question. That depends on the device, depends on the locality and everything.
Because I tried it. We'll talk about it when we talk about the tablet, but I tried it with APK Mirror and it failed every time.
And it still didn't work. Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because they might be totally different. The APKM files that APK Mirror uses to do this is different, I'm guessing, from the AAB files that Google is requiring app developers. That's just a guess as far as one of the reasons why. But anyways, yeah, it does feel more restrictive, though I understand why Google believes this to be a great idea. And it's obviously a huge savings for Google if they can cut down on serving all of this unnecessary stuff. It's more focused per device, so on a user level, it's probably a good thing. It's just it's another one of those motions where you're kind of limiting the openness, which is, again, what a lot of people have come to love about Android. Matteo, where do you fall on this? Like, what are your thoughts?
As someone who has had a few insights into how apps get built and how they get distributed, I think this is really, really interesting, and I actually support this. The reason for that is that the Android development landscape has been a little sort of too free in many cases. You find a lot of developers who tend to reinvent the wheel rather than using the tooling and the frameworks that Google provide as part of the Android operating system. And this has been going on since essentially the launch of Lollipop, as far as I'm aware, is Google has been telling developers, guys, you don't need to reinvent the wheel. Android and the framework of the operating system have a lot of what you need. Just let us do it for you. You just tell us what you want and we'll do it. And so essentially what these app bundles allow Google to do is they will not only target the individual device and the sort of conditions those devices are in, they'll also say, well, actually, if we're sending an older Android device, say with Android 9 or Android 10, the bundle will include everything that is needed that's not already in Android 11 and so forth. So this is going to be an incentive for not only the developers and Google to save in terms of bandwidth and resources, but it's also going to be a really good driver for the manufacturers to make sure that they have the latest version of Android on their devices, because the overall experience for the user will be easier, but not just for the user, for their own development. Because if we think about it as the launchers and all the system apps that manufacturers have on their devices, they're applications as well. So it's going to make the whole ecosystem for developers, Google, the phone device manufacturers, and the users better in the long run. It is a bit of a hard approach to it, but I think Google's at the point where they can do it now, and they don't have too much of a long-term risk in this move.
That's true. Plus, like I mentioned, a lot of those big name apps, they've already gone through with a change because of what was going on in Android 9, how they started to push apps towards it. So this is going to be more of an issue for indie devs who come through newly into the Play Store. I forget when. Go ahead.
So I think there's also a consideration. Do you remember Google launched it a couple of years ago now, instant apps, the ones that you could use from Google? So this will use the same sort of broken down concept of the app. You build it with modules and features in mind, and that way only the ones that actually need to be used are used. So the overall framework should be enabling both the app bundles and the instant app side of things.
I was noticing in one of the chat rooms someone asking, are they gonna remove the unknown sources, prompt from Android because you can't sideload APKs anymore? And I should reiterate, like this isn't necessary. This doesn't mean that Android suddenly doesn't support APKs. It also doesn't mean that developers can't export APKs. Developers can, from my understanding. Flo, you mentioned it. There is a way in the console to export an APK, and they would still need to do that because there are other app stores that support APKs. I don't think Google is necessarily saying, going forward, APKs are completely done. We're removing them from Android. It's only this new thing. And I don't think that's what Google is saying here. I think what they're saying is, if you're getting your app through the Play Store and it's a new app, this doesn't apply immediately to older apps. So if it's a new app and you want to distribute it through the Play Store, it has to support the app bundles. And of course, yes, that puts the keys into Google's hands. But that developer can still, to my understanding, export an APK, offer it for free on their site if they choose, offer it through any of the third-party app stores, and any user can still choose to install those APKs. It's just they're not going to be able to easily install the app bundles from the Play Store. That's going to require Google on the cloud side to kind of assemble these things and have more of an interaction. which, yes, gives Google more control. That might actually give Google more control of the kind that is better for, more secure for the user. I mean, it really does give them a deeper involvement in the safety and security of the App Store. But it's different. But it's different than what we're used to. It's different from this open, you've just got an APK and it's easy to pull it out from an app that you download and it's going to work on everything. It's just more customized, and because of that, things get more complicated. And so some people are just going to not like it because of that. And I can kind of understand that, but.
Yeah, and it puts a damper on those Windows 11 plans.
Well, that's a good point.
At least when it comes to just the open nature of side loading an APK, you're going to have to find a developer who wants to take that extra effort to make sure that you can get their app. And maybe it is an incentive for developers to start thinking about it in that manner. If you were going to just submit your app to both Amazon and Google at the same time, now you're going to have to do a little bit of extra work. But
yeah. I wonder how developers, feel about that. Is that just...
Yeah, how do they feel, Matteo, since you're here speaking for every developer in the world right now? Yeah. No pressure.
No pressure.
As developer opinionists global, I can definitely say that this is an extra step for most developers. I mean, when you're distributing an app globally, if you're, say, a large organization, you probably have a team of people making different builds for different app stores. Because let's not forget that the phone manufacturers, Samsung and others, have their own app stores. In many countries, both in Africa and Asia, each mobile phone network operator tends to have their own app store. And consumers often trust those app stores over Google themselves. And so it's going to be tough in the short run. I wouldn't be surprised to see some brokerage services popping up saying, give us one build of your app and we'll distribute it in all the app stores.
Yeah. Totally. I could see that too. Surprised if we don't see that very soon.
Does that create more fragmentation?
It potentially can, yes, because you will have some apps that will have different release cycles for your app. They may go through different validations on how they behave on the network or in that particular market. So it can cause some app fragmentation to the point where a consumer of an app, a user of an app in the US will see completely different behavior from a user in, say, Indonesia, because they have different app versions and the overall localization and network limitations might be put in place. But it's not too different from what we already have.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say, I think it's good we have you on today, Matteo, because we're going to be talking a lot more about these forks.
Yes.
And lots of some changes coming.
Some changes are afoot.
Changes happening.
The local Circle K. Name that movie. Okay, next story. It has nothing to do with Circle K. But I think this is also a good story for you, Matteo, for your appearance on today's show. Oppo and OnePlus are merging even more than the already announced merging that took place of its teams. We discussed it, I can't remember, a few weeks ago on the show. They have announced that OxygenOS, which is the OnePlus kind of UI launcher experience, so to speak, and ColorOS, which is the Oppo experience, they're going to be getting an integrated code base. They did say, on one hand, they said that users are likely to not notice any differences, but I don't know if that's necessarily with... that's just confusing to me, because I feel like a lot of what else I read said that the OxygenOS the visual aspects of this might change. A friend of the show, Max Weinbach, had tweeted out, and I did include it in the link here, or in the show notes here, sorry about that, but had tweeted out a comparison of OnePlus and Oppo device running the Android 12 beta and it showed, it was on a OnePlus 9, that's right. And it showed many similarities between ColorOS and OxygenOS. So it kind of seems like there's a big question mark as far as like how this is going to impact OxygenOS design. But Matteo, my question for you is, because I've not had much, if any, personal experience with Oppo devices, plenty of experience with OnePlus devices. True. But now that they're kind of merging more into one on many levels, like how do you feel about it? Having, I assume you've had experience with the Oppo devices more than I have. Like, how does this news strike you?
This is not too much of a surprise. Just looking at the history of OnePlus and how they went from using the Cyanogen Android distribution, that was not Cyanogen Mod, the open source version, the commercial Cyanogen. With the OnePlus One, they then decided that that was where they were going to draw the line. And they hired the Paranoid Android team mostly to build the first version of OxygenOS. I was lucky enough to be in Shenzhen and meet the team when I was there in 2015, and they were just about to launch the OnePlus 2. So having seen how that was being built, I can say that it had been happening for years gradually. A lot of the driver stack, all the bits that make the overall operating system work, OnePlus was relying more and more on the Oppo team, who ultimately were providing the majority of the components and the bits that put the phones together. So this had been happening gradually over time. And at some point, ColorOS developed into such a slightly refined Chinese Android distribution that they had the opportunity to say, well, let's put one OxygenOS and ColorOS together and take the best of both and give a consistent user experience across both brands so that consumers can ultimately upgrade from one to the other without friction. So we're at the point where the average smartphone consumer is now going to be upgrading to a smartphone every time they do. And changing Android distribution, even if the icons are slightly different, is quite a jarring experience for a lot of users.
Yeah.
By having this consistent OnePlus and Oppo experience, it means that a lot of OnePlus users may make the jump to the more premium Oppo smartphones that are available, because the most recent Oppo smartphones, I'm sure you've probably had other guests on the show discussing, are really, really good. From the cameras to the battery to the overall performance and experience, they're great. And so I think this is a great way for OnePlus and Oppo to maybe have some slightly different branding and messaging, but the overall experience being consistent. And I hate to say this, they're trying to iOSify the operating system across different hardware and brands. So BKK, the parent company of Oppo, Vivo, OnePlus, and Realme, have the opportunity to do this. They have the clout to do this, especially in a bit of a vacuum left by Huawei on the global stage.
Yeah, right. Yeah, good perspective there.
Yep.
Should also mention that they have revised their update schedule. So, and I just kind of expected that this would probably happen from OnePlus, but kind of expecting that this is going to happen more and more as Google has done this, as Samsung has done this. Now it's kind of becoming more and more standard, or expected to be standard. OnePlus announced 3 major Android updates and 4 years of security updates for its flagship line. Now that starts with the OnePlus 8 and newer. So if you're before the OnePlus 8, that promise doesn't apply to your flagship phone. So keep that in mind. If you have the Nord or the Nord CE line, you're going to get 2 major Android updates plus 3 years of security updates. The Nord N line, we'll get 1 major update, 3 years of security updates. At least they're sticking to the 3 years of security updates there, but getting the 1 major update. I suppose it's the budget brand, so at a certain point, hardware manufacturers have to do all the calculus to understand whether it behooves them to spend the time and the resources focused on bringing yet another Android update to a very inexpensive phone. And that's probably what we're looking at right here. And what are we looking at right there?
So this is a OnePlus Nord N100 4G smartphone.
Okay.
And if I scratch on the OnePlus logo here, I'm being facetious here. If I scratch here, I'm pretty sure that I can read Oppo A53. Because in terms of hardware, it is an identical device. The only difference is just the branding and the operating system. So the Oppo A53 is running ColorOS, and the OnePlus Nord N100 is running OxygenOS. That's the only difference. And because from an accountancy perspective, they hadn't budgeted for more than one update, this is in the same bucket as the Oppo A53 for long-term support. And whilst it's great for them to promise 3 years of security updates, I want to see this happen because we've been burnt in the past by a lot of companies promising lots of security updates, but that never materializing.
Yeah.
And in this case, I'm pointing my finger at a company called Nokia, who recently have been really dropping the ball on their security and operating system updates.
Yeah, if you're going to make the promise, stick to the promise. The problem is, by that point, the promise has just become accepted. People are like, oh, they said the thing. Great. Yay. Good job. Thank you. And then we forget that they said the thing. And then we realize that they never did the thing. Yeah, so that's a bummer when that happens.
I have a OnePlus too.
Flo's very happy with her OnePlus. Is that the N100 or the N10?
It's the N200. I unboxed it last week, Jason.
Oh, that's gone. Right. That's right. I saw that in the rundown. Sorry, I didn't see the show, but I did see it in the rundown.
I just wanted to mention to Matteo that I have the North American sister phone right here.
Great. It's the Freedom One Plus.
Except that it only works on like T-Mobile's 5G network, if even.
Okay.
Magenta Freedom.
Yeah, there you go. Magenta Freedom.
Put that back over there.
All right. Well,
that was just the news.
Yeah, that was just the news. We got a whole lot coming up here, and you'll be delighted to know that up next we have the Hardware Shack. Yes, Matteo and Flo's Hardware Shack. This week, they're sharing the Hardware Shack because each of them, Matteo and Flo, have an interesting piece of hardware to talk about. And we've got some other things to talk about too. But Matteo, we'll start with you. What you got?
So the thing I'm bringing this week is a very inexpensive smartphone from a company called Doogee. So you may remember Doogee made some very inexpensive smartphones as well as some ridiculously rugged and large batteried smartphones. In this case, they're coming across with the X96 Pro, which is a sub-$100 smartphone, which offers a nice big 6.5-inch screen, 4 gigabytes of RAM, 64 gigabytes of storage, which is expandable with micro SD, always great to see. It does have micro USB for charging, but at under $100 for the smartphone, I don't think there's too much we can complain about at this point.
Yeah.
It has a Courage port. That's a 3.5 millimeter audio jack. So you can use wired headphones with this. And it's fantastically plastic. It is pretty much all plastic apart from some hardened glass on the screen. But when you unbox it, as I did on the Tech Travel Geeks YouTube channel, it has a screen protector already applied. And that 720 screen, or HD ready screen, is pretty good. It's got punchy colors. It's an IPS panel. But if you're just watching Disney Plus, Netflix, BBC iPlayer, it is perfectly fine for watching video. And that decent 4,500 milliamp hour battery delivers at least 1 day's use in my experience. One of the really good things is that it doesn't have a glass back. It's a plastic back. And it doesn't even have a SIM ejector tool because you need to pry the plastic casing off to get access to the SIM card and memory card.
That's old school.
Yeah, that's
it's
old
proper
school.
old school. And that's how they kept the cost down, because
That's
you're getting
fair.
a lot of smartphone for less than $100.
Mm-hmm.
And for playing games like Mobile Legends, it's perfectly fine. You can even play Call of Duty Mobile in low screen resolution and frame rate. What I was particularly thrown out of sync by this phone is the chipset. So usually in this price category, you get smartphones with MediaTek chipsets. If you're particularly unlucky, you'll have a Qualcomm Snapdragon 215 chipset. But this is a Unisoc chipset, which I had almost forgotten about until I got this phone. So Unisoc are actually specialized in not the most efficient chipsets that go in things like set-top boxes for cable TV, in sometimes questionable Android TV boxes loaded with Kodi and other sources of media and entertainment. And updating it in the past has been quite an issue, as in it was always difficult to get the right drivers and build the Android's distributions to go on them. Whereas Doogee seem to have got a good supply of Unisoc chipsets, and Unisoc seem to be supplying them with the support they need to maintain this smartphone. So you get a decent smartphone with this chipset made for a cable TV box or an Android TV box, which works perfectly fine. And that's surprising to me, because usually in this price segment, MediaTek is king. And it's interesting to see another chipset manufacturer in this space in the Android world. And realistically, I hope they actually expand, because apart from MediaTek and Qualcomm, we have Samsung with the Exynos, who mostly supply Samsung phones and the occasional brand in China like Meizu. And Huawei have essentially stopped making their own chipsets, the Kirin chipsets. So I think it's good to have a bit of competition here and to be able to have a sub-$100 smartphone that offers a lot of value. So I unboxed this smartphone last week. I'm going through my usual long-term review of using it as a main device for at least a month before I review it. But so far, first impressions are very, very positive. So interesting to see this relatively small startup in Shenzhen coming out with a sub-$100 smartphone, which offers amazing value. And especially in these tough times, that's the market segment that's most interesting. When a lot of people are having issues with the pandemic recovery, with being able to afford smartphones, having this type of option is always a good thing to see.
Unisoc is not something that I've been very familiar with. I mean, I'm definitely not familiar with seeing phones that have that processor inside. So I'm very, very curious about that.
Don't think it's here.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
We just got MediaTek being used here, and that's in the low-end Spectrum devices. Like, you'll see that in low-end Lenovo tablets and such.
Yeah.
But Unisoc are probably in devices that you never thought to check the chipset on.
Right.
Probably
good
true.
point.
Such as Android TV boxes, home automation, other things. It's not the most efficient chipset. In this case, it's a 28 nanometer one. But in a low-powered smartphone, that should be more than adequate, especially if you have eight cores on it.
And then Doogee, or Doogee, however you want to say it, it just as a brand tends to make a lot of phones in this kind of price category. But this isn't a device that we really see in the U.S. But
it won't be in network stores, but as far as I'm aware, they sell quite well on Amazon globally. It's not just in the US. So in the SIM-free category across Europe, Asia, and other markets, especially in South America, Doogee are surprisingly successful for a relatively small company. Just because of that price sensitivity in that market segment and the fact that they have an established brand at this point, it's just a very interesting one to see actually come out with a Unisoc chipset, because this may be the example that other companies like Ulefone and others will follow going forward.
Interesting. All right. Thank you for that. Everybody should definitely check out more on the Doogee X96 Pro. Sounds like Matteo's going to do the longer term review of a month. That's awesome. That's a cool thing to double down on, because most reviewers out there end up spending a week with a product, then giving a review, and doing a longer term review gives it a nice different perspective on it. So.
Thanks. I mean, we did the same with our Pixel 5 and Samsung S20 FE. Those were 6-month reviews. We didn't bother reviewing them in the first month. Everybody's
doing it. Yeah, totally. All right.
So long term, I think is, in my experience, is a good way to actually get that muscle memory and learn what a device is really like in day-to-day use.
Yeah, indeed. Cool. All right, now this is Flo and Matteo's hardware shack this time around. They both have their names on the outside of the shack. So we'll go into the other room where Flo is standing by to talk about the MatePad. Is it the MatePad Pro?
Yes, and actually...
See, she's in the other room. We can hear her from the other room.
Right here. All right. I wanted to get it so I can show you all this nifty magnetic technology here. So this is the Huawei MatePad Pro 12.6 inch. This is a 12.6 inch Android tablet. That's what I'm going to say. It's an Android tablet. And that wasn't supposed to fall like that. And
it's broken. No, it's not.
No, it's not broken. It's so up here is where I put it on the wrong spot. That's why it was a little loose. So what I'm showing you right here is this pencil that comes with the Huawei MatePad Pro, and it docks and charges wirelessly just like that.
Oh, nice.
Why hasn't Apple done this?
That's convenient. Yeah, that's super convenient.
So that's really nice. And then what's also really nice is I'm going about it through the hardware first, and I'll explain. You'll understand why in a second.
Cool.
Yeah, this hardware, this folio is just really nice. Look at this quick, as all the magnets are falling apart. Look at this quick startup already, just right there. We've got our notifications. We've got this really nice keyboard that I can't even explain. I did a couple typing tests with it. I was within 90 to 100 words per minute every time I did the typing test, which just sort of, it makes me happy because it's not very easy to achieve with a lot of keyboards out there.
Especially on the folio type kind of fold around keyboards.
Correct.
Usually they're so flat and so, just shallow on the travel and stuff. They're hard to type on because of it. I find anyways.
No, I agree with you. This might be an interesting little news tidbit. Let's see. I can't show you. It won't work through the web camera, but it says, excuse me. It says, to mask or not to mask, what will Boris Johnson and others do after the 19th of July, Matteo? Who knows?
Who knows? I wish I knew. If we had that sort of insider information, we could make some really interesting decisions about travel, for example.
I know.
Tech travel.
And here's the thing, Matteo. I'm sharing with you the news from this Huawei MatePad Pro because it's not actually set on the U.S. region. Because as you see, ladies and gentlemen, Huawei has been politically and banned out of the United States.
Yep.
So you cannot access anything on this tablet as a U.S. dwelling person. You can only access it as an overseas dwelling person. I actually didn't check to see if Canada was on here, but I ended up just defaulting to the UK because I figured English, I can understand what's going on over there. Originally, I had it set in Romanian, but didn't really like the apps that it was serving me through the the app gallery. Harmony OS 2.0, that's what's running on this Huawei MatePad. But before, again, we talk about that OS, let me throw some specs at you. This is a 6.7 millimeter thick tablet, which is like not that bad, actually. It's really nice. About 1.3 pounds. It's super light. actually has kind of a plasticky back, but you couldn't even tell in person. I honestly didn't even realize until I had looked up the specs. We've got that 12.6-inch ultra-wide display with a ratio of 16:10. 90% bezel, which Huawei is very proud of. And we'll note that it's 5% smaller than the one on the iPad Pro. So there you go. Wi-Fi 6 capable, so ready for all the next generation connections. 256 gigs of space on this tablet that I have in my hand, which is really nice. A 5-nanometer Huawei Kirin 9000E processor that I could not benchmark, partly because of the app bundle situation. I couldn't figure it out in time that I wrote the review for Gizmodo. So I kind of just went by other people's benchmarks, and it appears to be a very capable processor, akin to a lot of 7th and 8th generation Intel ones, just in case anybody's curious. Also 10,050 milliamp battery on the inside of this, which is honestly 10 and a half hours I got of battery life streaming through a 24-hour YouTube video on this tablet, which is how we do our battery test at Gizmodo. And 40-watt wired fast charging, 27-watt wireless charging. It also has reverse 10-watt wireless charging capabilities, which is super neat because if you're out and about, it means you can charge up your smartphone or your smartwatch by just placing it on the back. And then, of course, I showed you that pen, which is really super nice. It's not quite like an S Pen, but I actually like it for that reason. It feels like a really sturdy Bic pen. So all the accessories, all the hardware, Huawei's got going for it. But because I'm in the US, I'm already locked out of so much. And it doesn't have Google Play Store or Google Play services. And I really found out how much I rely on my Google account to get me into things, because I could barely access anything I needed, even through the browser. If you try and access your Google Play account or even your Gmail, it will immediately lock you out. It will say, sorry, this is not supported through this browser. I've tried that in several different browsers and I got the same message. Very frustrating. I just want to very quickly go through this list of apps that I tried to find in the Huawei app gallery, which is where you can get apps for Huawei OS 2.0. All Trails, no. Blue by ADT, no. Samsung Smart Things, only externally, and it'll give you an APK site to go download it from if it finds it somewhere hosted externally. TP-Link Casa, no. Philips Hue, only third-party apps. Digitally imported, no. Spotify, no. And again, I tried to offload that through an app package. Didn't work. ExpressVPN, that was the only one I was able to find. That installed just fine. HBO Max, no. Paramount Plus, no. Instagram, no. There was Snapchat and TikTok, though. Patreon, no. And lastly, Pokémon Go. That was not available in the Huawei app gallery. So, this is not offered in the United States. So really me going through this was just an experiment of using Harmony OS. And I will say that otherwise, besides the app situation, it's a very pleasant experience. Browser's really nice. The UI is really nice. I don't really care too much for like the iconography and just like the basic aesthetic, but otherwise it's all Android bones. It's, you know how when you get into a Lexus and it just feels like a Toyota body? It's kind of what it feels like with this version of Android. You know it's Android. It's just not Google's Android. And that becomes even more apparent when you try to do anything on google.com.
Yeah, well, you were also writing about and talking about, you know, this like OAuth problem, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that right there is just a pain in the butt. Like, sure, there are ways around that potentially, but I mean, it's not even just that you explicitly can't use the Play Store to install apps or have an Android Google app running. It's that any other apps that you happen to have or services that you happen to have that require a Google sign-in, it's going to give you a lot of trouble getting into those apps and services. And that's probably going to be one of those things that you don't realize how much of an impact it has until suddenly you don't have it anymore.
Yeah, it's making me think a lot about this whole like ecosystem I'm a part of, ecosystem that once felt like super open and just open to whatever. And the more we've been talking about it, it just feels not necessarily like it's closing up, but it's clicky, right?
Yeah.
Because if you go find yourself in one click and you're kind of stuck in that little click, and that's how I feel like using Google and its OAuth to log into. I mean, I use it to log in at Dropbox. I use it to log in here and there. Luckily, I had a previous method of logging into Dropbox that let me in. So I was able to get in that way. But otherwise, couldn't do any work. Couldn't publish Material Podcast. That's my show on Relay FM with Andy and Atco. And I'm the one who's in charge of publishing that podcast. And I couldn't do any like downloading, or I couldn't upload anything to Libsyn. I couldn't get into the CMS, and that was all because of my OAuth. So so it was like, well, forget this. I guess I'm not doing any work on this because I can't. I'm just going to do it on my desktop.
Ouch. And that's for a device that starts at around $800. You point out in your article, US $49.99.
It's $800 hardware for sure. It is not. The software experience, though, for a U.S. person, like Matteo, you were saying earlier that people in other countries use other app stores. And I totally, I have family members who do. Like I'm familiar a little bit with that. So I wish I could have been overseas so I could get the full experience of having this, because it definitely feels half doing it from the U.S. I feel all those fences put up.
Yeah.
Physically.
I'm sorry Huawei forced you to read the BBC.
Oh, yeah. Actually, Matteo, even worse. Everything is Sky News on here. It's like,
oh, dear. It's News
like
International.
Plane crash, train crash, plane crash, train crash. I'm like, oh, my God, everything is terrible.
Wait a minute, that's not funny? Everything being terrible is not funny? Although it's
No, it's not, but that's Sky News for you. They tell you about like every terrible that's their version of salaciousness. It's just like, here's a really terrible thing that happened to a person today and the aftermath of it to traumatize you.
And here's some ads on releasing equity from your household because you're old.
Anyway.
That's it. But
we're getting old, guys. We're getting old. We're complaining about.
Did you have the chance to use Petal Search?
I did use Petal Search. I don't really understand it. So the last thing I just want to leave everybody with, because this was the biggest issue that I ran into, but it was the side loading of apps. I was able to get some apps on here, sure, not a problem. Download them from APK Mirror, download them from some other APK sources, as shown to me through Petal Search. Thanks, Petal. But when it came to apps like Spotify, couldn't install it because of the app package situation. I tried to install it through the APK Mirror app, which is a side-loadable app because you could just download it from their site, and it kept crashing. And I'm wondering if it has something to do with the chipset, the difference in specifications. When we talked about those app bundles, we talked about how their specific device...
right.
Whatever packets in there that make the app work specifically with the device or with a chipset or something.
Yeah.
So I'm imagining it has something to do with that, and then it just crashed. That's just my complete unscientific inference. But it was a very interesting. It's been an interesting experience. And I'm just. Is this the future of Android? I feel like this is what's happening.
Yeah, right. Things are splintering a little bit. I don't know.
They're getting very good in the Google lane. So if you're staying in the Google lane, you're going to be fine. But if you want to venture out of that lane, if you want to try something else, something like Harmony OS makes me feel like it's not without its like bundle of caveats.
Yeah.
And things like app bundling, I'm imagining, are just going to make things a little more complicated for people who might be, iced out of the Play Store because of something political. This is literally just somebody made a policy that said this is not allowed. And that's why I don't have access to these apps that I use every day.
Yeah.
That is wild. Like when you try and wrap your head around that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's unfortunate. And I don't even know that Google necessarily wants for that to be the case with Huawei, although
they don't have a
choice.
They don't have a choice in this.
Yeah.
This is completely because, and if we're talking administrations here, our latest administration just signed in continuing this ban on working with Chinese companies. It's weird. And if this is the political climate we're allowing,
then
I'm
get
going to tell you,
more
it's
used to
it's keeping
devices
Android
that do
tablets
this.
out of America.
Yeah.
I'll say
Keeping
one
Android
thing.
tablets out of America.
I'll say one thing. This is, I think, as much a lobbying and financial thing on behalf of other companies as much as it is a political one, because Huawei was an enormous threat to the incumbent Qualcomm in the chipset space. They were a real threat in that space, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Qualcomm's lobbying dollars having gone to ensuring that Huawei stay out of the game for a little while longer. And that lobbying, in a way, has also reflected in Xiaomi, who are one of Qualcomm's biggest customers, funnily enough, being put on the list for a while and then being taken off.
Yeah.
I love it when you talk policy, Matteo.
Speaking of Xiaomi...
Yeah, so you had mentioned leading up to the show that you had some thoughts on the state of 5G outside of the U.S., and you mentioned two different devices that kind of make up a little bit of your perspective on this, Matteo. POCO M3 Pro and the Redmi Note 10 5G. So we don't have a whole lot of time here, but I'm super curious from your perspective to kind of detail what you mean, because, 5G... I feel like we're starting to get to the point in the U.S. where we're not questioning 5G's utility, not because it's proven itself, but just because it's becomes sort of ubiquitous at this point to see 5G offered in a number of places. And I'm not even so certain that when I see 5G, I'm getting 5G speeds in air quotes, whatever the heck those are. But I'm seeing 5G in my status bar a whole lot more now than I ever was. So I assume that it's there. And I'm curious to know what the state of 5G is outside of the US using these devices as the example. What you got? So
the two devices that I mentioned when we were organizing my appearance on the show are the Redmi Note 10 5G and the Xiaomi POCO M3 Pro 5G. Now, these are two devices from the sub-brands of Xiaomi. So you have the Redmi, which is the slightly more premium, but definitely more budget focused brand than Xiaomi actual. And then you have POCO, which is more of the sort of OnePlus type brand, which is great value for money, but marginally less expensive than Redmi. The whole point of these two devices are they're essentially the same one with different branding and coloring. That's what's happening here. So obviously POCO is targeted at particular markets, in particular India, where it's a very strong brand. And Redmi is aimed at Southern Europe and other markets. Now, the key thing here is that these are two devices running MediaTek's Dimensity 5G chipset. This is the Dimensity 700. This is a 5G chipset, but apart from that, you have a 90 hertz LCD display. You have 4 or 6 gigabytes of RAM. You have plenty of storage expandable with micro SD, all the usual connectivity. The key thing is for European markets, you have NFC and 5,000 milliamp hour batteries. Both devices also have 18-watt charging. Now, it's interesting. They've gone with Dimensity 5G chipsets because there is starting to be availability of 5G networks. And as you said, Jason, you may be getting 5G in the status bar of your smartphone. Does that mean you're getting 5G speeds? Probably not, because there's a lot of backhaul work that we need to get done to get those fiber cables to those cell towers. But in the meantime, you will have slightly less latency between you and the tower. And it's interesting to see that this category, which is around about $250 now having 5G. Nice big screen, decent battery life, fast charging, plastic backs, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And you have great value delivered here. And if 5G is available, you can make the most of it. But the key thing is, if you don't have 5G, is it really worth spending $250 on these devices? That's a decision you'll need to make, and how important the status symbol of the smartphone is to you. If you were to go for a similar device, the Redmi Note 10 without 5G, you can actually get something for around about $150, which arguably has a better camera and offers similar performance overall. So it's an interesting space that's starting to emerge. 5G is actually starting to hit the sub $250 price range, which means that it's an enormous market segment outside of the US. And as I said earlier, in these particularly trying times, to have access to smartphone technology like this and being able to allow people to communicate, to entertain themselves, and more importantly, download their favorite podcasts, such as All About Android. This is a really good thing to see, is accessibility at this price point. You don't need to spend $1,000 on a decent smartphone experience at this point. Xiaomi have these offerings. A lot of other smartphones are in the sub $250 price range now offer a great overall experience. Oh, and try not to take too many selfies in the dark, because the selfie camera is arguably not the best one out there.
Arguably.
Dark selfies is going to be a challenge for a lot of cameras, probably. But yeah, apparently these more than others. Like I said, I've kind of gotten used to the fact that phones are just, at least here in the US, it seems like the majority of phones are supporting 5G or are supporting whatever 5G is right now. But what is 5G right now? It's really hard to know. I never know when I'm connected to 5G whether it really makes that much of a difference over LTE or not. But I guess I'm happy to see it when it's there, even if it's not much of an improvement. At least it's.
I guess I'm happy.
and so then translate that over to I guess I'm happy that I, let's say, spent $100 extra on this phone to see that there. Like, that's where the value kind of loses itself, because people hear that and then they think, okay, well then do I really need it? I don't know that I do. And at this point, we're still kind of firmly in that camp of like, I don't know that you really do. It's certainly not the 5G that anyone promised when this was first getting built up as like the next big technological breakthrough for mobile phones. It's just not so apparent. It's not so obvious, and so maybe you don't need to spend that extra $100 on it.
Yeah, I hate to think how many trillions of dollars have been spent on 5G marketing, because for those of us in the industry who have been going to trade shows, the last 3-4 years have been all about 5G. But the benefits to the average consumer at this point are minimal, if they exist.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. All right. Let's. We've got more coming up, and you don't have to go anywhere because it's next. Like as in right now, we're gonna check out some app news. All right, everybody, buckle up, because AT&T is joining the RCS revolution via Google Messages. Apparently, AT&T is jumping on the same train that T-Mobile jumped on, which wasn't very long ago. They did this in March, where T-Mobile made the announcement that Android Messages would be the default app here in the States on Android devices on the T-Mobile network going forward. And that was a big move for the growing ubiquity of RCS. Now AT&T is offering the same. They're saying they're going to opt into using Android messages as their default messaging app for Android phones on the AT&T network, which, at least here in the US, leaves Verizon as the last one standing, still uncommitted. Although we might start seeing, companies like Samsung. Part of me feels like Samsung mentioned something about this. Maybe what it was is they committed to installing Android messages on their phones, even though the Samsung messaging app was still on there and is still the default. I'm not really quite sure where that landed. But if Samsung was to say, all right, we'll do it too, then it kind of doesn't matter if Verizon does it or not. That's going to be the majority of the Android phones that Verizon sells is probably Samsung devices. So all in all, good news for RCS and for chat messaging as a replacement for SMS. I don't know. I like that. I like RCS. My usage of RCS, I notice when somebody else is using RCS. I see the kind of like so-and-so is typing and, some of the extra features that happen with RCS, and I quite like it.
That's nice for you. That must be nice.
Good for you.
How nice for you to have RCS. I don't have it.
You don't?
Unfortunately.
What? Are you on Verizon?
I am on Verizon. I should also note that on Verizon, they tend to push their Messages Plus as the situation that you want there.
But you
so
don't actually
I'm also having problems with RCS right now because once you enable the chat features, that can actually break some of the, I don't know what's like going on with the network pinging, but I have to constantly clear my cache to get text messages.
Lame. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gloated about RCS. I just assumed, Flo.
I'm just super frustrated that the carrier thing keeps happening. I'm very frustrated that my husband had the same problem with his OnePlus 9 Pro, and he had to call Verizon to get it fixed. I'm having the same issue with the Pixel 5, so I think I'm going to have to call Verizon and see if...
Yeah, that's lame.
Project Fi.
That's why all of this stuff is really frustrating. That's why we report on this stuff, because...
Yeah, that's really lame. Hopefully Verizon comes around. Well, wait a minute. Okay, I might sound stupid when I ask this, but is RCS, it's a worldwide thing, right? Like, I guess I'm so used on this show to talking about RCS in US-centric terms, but Matteo, you are on the show. How does RCS apply to you? Like,
I live in the United Kingdom. I live in the United Kingdom, and here RCS is supported by, to my understanding, all the major networks. So my three UK SIM card, that supports RCS. My Vodafone SIM card supports RCS, and so does my BTEE one. So that, to me, is great. Sadly, I'm of the sort of at the point in my life where I had transitioned away from using SMS apps altogether. I now rely on Telegram, WhatsApp, and Google Chat. So I don't really use the Messages app, even though it is the default on the majority of my phones, apart from my iOS iPhone, obviously. So it is there. I have used it a few times, but it was mostly to see how it works. And when you compare it to, for example, Telegram, it pales in comparison because there's so many extra features in that dedicated messaging app.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I just think of like all the times that, I don't know that I could get to a point to where I didn't have SMS as at least a part, or RCS as it were, as a part of my messaging kind of approach, because like my parents, that's just what they use. My sister and family. Anyways, it would be too complicated. Like I'm kind of amazed that anyone can find themselves in a situation where they don't at least use it part of the time. But that's just because in my experience, that's just not possible. Yeah. Otherwise, I would agree. I'd be right there with you.
Just checking my phone usage for the last month, I sent 2 SMS.
Oh, okay. Wow.
that's it.
Wow, and everybody else has hopped on the messaging service bandwagon. Yeah, I mean, I would prefer to do that, but barring the fact that I can't do that, I'll take RCS over SMS for sure.
Go where the people are.
Yeah, that's true. Unfortunately, that means like 10 apps in my messaging folder on my front screen. But anyways, that's a problem that we all have to some degree. Flo, what you got?
You know where the people also are?
Yeah.
They are absolutely on Pokemon Go, which is celebrating an anniversary this week. Pokemon Go is 5 years old. It's been around that long, folks. It has made $5 billion in revenue from player spending in the last 5 years, according to Sensor Tower. In 2020 alone, Pokemon Go racked up $1.3 billion, a 41% increase year over year, with 632 million downloads, the most of which are from Android users. So Thank you, Android users, for playing Pokemon Go on your Android phone. But I will say, lately, there's a lot of controversies coming through with how they're changing some of the Pokemon Go way of playing. They're making it so that you have to cross the street to hit a Pokestop now. Versus before, in the pandemic times, as they called it, they made it a little easier to hit Pokestops so that you could do social distancing. People are not happy about that. There's a lot of angry Redditors.
Yeah, well, that's not surprising.
Well, I mean, listen, I don't want to cross the street either to hit a Pokestop. Your lazy friend Flo. It's not even that I'm lazy. I'm watching my kid. I can't always cross the street and play Pokemon Go.
And if you do, look both ways, okay? Seriously. Protect yourselves out there. It's a mean Poke Street.
It would be interesting to
look and listen.
Yeah, there you go. Stop.
It would be interesting to know, of the $5 billion in revenue, how much Niantic and the Pokemon Go app have spent in terms of cloud hosting and various database servers, because they handled the sudden surges in users very, very well back when they launched. But it is a very data-intensive app, and I would like to know, of that $5 billion in revenue, how much went to either Google Cloud or AWS or everyone in between.
Yeah, right. Probably a lot.
It would be Google Cloud, wouldn't it? It feels like it would be sacrilege if it was Amazon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, $5 billion, man, that's a lot of money for one game. That is just insanity to me.
Listen, I spend,
You spend $5 billion in your sleep, you know? No, I'm just kidding. I don't even know what that means. That doesn't mean anything. That's just what I thought you were going to say there. Anywho, all right. And finally, and this admittedly is a story that I think Ron would have brought into the show if he was here today, which he is not. But I decided to put it in anyways. He plugged it into our WhatsApp chat. And I was like, even though he's not here, we can still appreciate that there are times where Google apps on iOS get things that Android users do not get. And that makes some fans of this show angry. Others couldn't care less. But if you happen to be on iOS and you have the Google app, apparently there is an Easter egg that you can find that you can't find on Android. If you go to the tabs menu and then you wait for these shapes to appear, and that second link that I gave you in the doc actually shows this. There's a video there, Burke. Go in the tabs menu, wait for the shapes to appear, and then you swipe up on a shape. It turns it into a pinball game. So, of course, Ron would want this in the show because Ron's Mr. Pinball is the name on his name tag. And, apparently it has levels and there's different obstacles that appear and everything as you play through. Like, it's a full-on game. So, I don't know. I think that looks cool. I want that game. Why can't we have that game, huh? Google, huh? Why? So, anyways.
I need to talk to Ron about whether or not there's a physical Pokemon pinball machine out there, because
there must be. Let's see here. Pinball, Pokemon.
Well, there are the games, but a physical one?
But is it pinball based? Oh no, I see what you mean. Video game. We want like an actual hardware, full size pinball game. But no, I'm not finding it.
Yeah.
That's weird. How? That doesn't make any sense to me. There's pinball.
What I want to know is, obviously,
I did find
Ron
this
isn't
small
here.
pocket one, just by the way. Sorry, Matteo.
Yeah,
It's in the
Can I
Slack chat.
plug my Google iOS app scores into Scorebit?
That's a good question. I mean, I think if Ron is really dedicated to the story that he wanted us to discuss if he was in, but is not now, he should go through the hard work of including it into Scorebit.
I agree.
Just, put your money where your mouth is as far as that's concerned.
Commit to the bit.
It's
Commit to the
probably
bit.
like a year's work for the company, but
Yeah, right. Just for a random mention on the show. I did find, so JP's Pokemon Pinball. Is this JP Pokemon Pinball? Is this, I'm trying to see if this is legitimate or if this is just...
JP usually means Japan or Japanese.
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of eBay searching in my pandemic time. That was my pandemic hobby.
Okay.
Flo, I have to say the Pokemon hardware game is a little disappointing.
The one I sent, the little itty bitty one.
It's just...
I know. It's yucky. It's not. It's just like not cute.
It's not that great.
Oh, it's so close. So close, Pokemon. You almost nailed it with that pinball game.
The pinball games are so good. Yeah. I've been trying to bond with Ron about that, but I just don't know if it's possible. So.
Oh, so I figured it out. Okay, so there is we've talked about this in pre and post show before, but never on a TWiT Plus feed, where there are virtual pinball. There's like a virtual pinball community where you can have like a pinball hardware and then put the virtual experience inside of it. It's actually a screen. And I found a link to a Pokemon one that can go in there, and it looks about as close as we get to it. And that's what JP's Pokemon Pinball is it's a software version of this.
Bless. I will have to look this after the show. Otherwise, I will probably crash my old computer.
Don't crash your computer. But which kind of makes me want one of those virtual pinball decks. That would be I don't know if it's called a deck, but it would be a lot of fun. Looks like a lot of fun. So scroll over to the side. This is so off topic. Scroll over to the side and you'll see a screenshot there, and then enlarge that. Click on it. It goes full screen. It does.
Enhance.
Yeah. It's this thing with a website where you click it and then it enlarges. And see, now that looks like a real pinball game, but it's
that
not.
Looks really neat.
But it looks pretty good. That looks about as close to Pokemon Pinball as we can get.
See, the things we do to feel close to Ron, but then I had to put my Pokemon spin on it. So
I love it. I love that spin. It's a great combination. It's like chocolate and peanut butter. They go well together. Mm-hmm. All right. Let's check out some emails from fans of the show. Why don't we? That's up next. AAA at twit.tv, 347-SHOW-AAA. If you want to leave us a message, we have a couple of emails this week. Flo, you got the first one.
That's right. So this first one actually comes in from Down Under. Okay. Sorry to every Australian person that I just insulted.
An Australian eye roll just happened.
Feel free to make fun of us Americans. There's plenty. This one comes in from Andy. Andy writes, I caught the note of exasperation in Ron's comments about Netflix, insisting on playing trailers as soon as one's cursor alights on a movie or TV show splash page, and agree. It is extremely irritating. This behavior can be tweaked, however, using the Netflix Android app. Ding. The ding was my editorial note. Sign in, click on your profile icon at top right, then hit account. Then profiles and parental controls, and then playback settings. Here, one can tweak settings for autoplay trailers, autoplay next episode, etc. Very useful. Back in profiles and parental controls, there's other goodies, like adjusting subtitle appearance and, of course, parental controls. All good stuff. Thank you, Andy. That was a lot of good stuff from Down Under.
And once again, an Australian eye roll just occurred.
I'm sorry. Again, you can make fun of me. Just don't make fun of me for liking Pokemon, because that's mean.
Yeah, no, not that. But Tamagotchi, maybe that. All right. And we have an email of the week Yeah, you didn't know I was going to do that because I forgot. I told you we shortened things a little bit. Sorry about that, Burke.
Sorry,
it's okay.
Burke.
We'll just go ahead and vamp and keep talking, and eventually you're going to play the soundbite, and it's going to be great.
So much. We're gonna vamp. I have a Tamagotchi right here that I'm reviewing.
There it is.
So.
Oh, it's so new looking.
It is.
Chris, congratulations. You are the aforementioned email of the week. Now, I couldn't remember when I got this email. I put it in here. It's very self-serving, but I put it in here because I couldn't remember if we told this story on the show or if we told it in pre-show. The story about me driving in the Tesla and the air conditioner not working, was that show or pre-show? I don't know.
Oh, wait. It was...
I can't remember.
It must have been pre-show.
Yeah, but okay. So if it was
It all
pre-show,
blends.
my apologies. But essentially, it boils down to this: I had a Tesla Model X. I was in 115-degree weather. I tried to show the car to my mom and dad to like impress them, and the air conditioner didn't work. And we sweated like crazy for probably 25 minutes of a drive, and I couldn't understand why the air conditioner wasn't working. So not at all Android related, but I'm going to read the email anyways because it gave me the answer I was looking for. So Chris,
All right.
Chris knows why the Model X did this. So Chris says, I heard about your issue with the Tesla Model X. Just had to email you. I have owned a Model X, Model S, Model 3, and Model Y. Now as I'm reading this, I'm realizing Chris is just bragging at this point. Chris says, I have personally had the same issue with my Model S and can tell you what caused that issue. You probably had the car parked in direct sunlight. I did. And with it being 110 degrees, the batteries were getting hot. They probably were. They are designed to keep cool. You don't want them to go boom. That's true. I don't want that. The car is designed to direct cooling to the batteries. This is why your AC didn't work until the batteries in the car cooled correctly. If I heard you correctly, the car's AC turned on after you returned home that evening. It's a design flaw in the car. In the future, just take the car to a drive-through car wash. Not kidding. That's what I did. Chris, you're a genius. You figured it out. That makes perfect sense. I wondered if the AC wouldn't turn on because of some sort of battery protection, but you described it beautifully, and you gave us the car wash hack, and it has nothing to do with Android. That is why it's the email of the week.
And just for those of us who don't use freedom degrees, in communism degrees, that's 43.3 degrees.
Communism degrees.
I've never heard that one before.
That's what the C stands for. Communism and freedom.
Never
Got
knew
it.
that, but that's fascinating and very appropriate. No.
43 is warm.
43. Yeah, it is warm. It was hot in that sucker. I mean, there was no. I felt very embarrassed. It's like, yeah, come on. No, it'll be great. You've never been in a Tesla before? Check this out. And then 20 minutes of total sweating. And we were stuck on the freeway. And it was like, I'm sorry, Mom and Dad. I'm really sorry. Anyways, it was funny. And thank you, Chris. That's awesome. That really gave me the information that I needed to know never to park a Tesla in direct sunlight in 110-degree weather ever again.
I mean, Jason, to be honest,
Yeah?
who would have known? That is the last thing I would have ever thought.
I just kind of thought like when it's 110 degrees outside, 115 degrees inside the vehicle, like that's when you need AC most. And so I kind of feel like it failed me when I needed it most.
Totally.
And then maybe that's what it means when Chris says it's a design flaw. At the same time, it's a design not flaw because it's protecting the battery from exploding. So I don't know what the better option is. I guess the better option is to just sweat so that it's not on fire, because that would suck too. Anyways,
Has Elon started making still suits yet?
not yet, but he's going to do that, and he's going to market them for really warm days and say, put this on.
Oh, wait. There's a lot of things that could go wrong with a still suit. And for people who don't know what a still suit is, it's a suit that lets you
Still?
Recover your bodily fluids.
Oh, boy.
So that they don't get lost. It's something
so that you can
from
drink
Dune.
them to survive.
Yeah.
It's part of the Dune Wiki fandom.
It is, yes.
And
Sorry,
it would
too
be
geeky there here.
I wouldn't I wouldn't be surprised at all if he's got it in the works.
Not for this station. I'm pretty sure there's people out there who know this is a Dune reference.
I do.
I haven't seen Dune in a very long time, and I never read the book, so that's where I stand. But anyways, I will see the new one that's coming out. That looks pretty cool. Anywho, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to stop this show because I have a feeling I'm entering into dangerous territory where I'm just going to get myself into trouble. We are done with this episode of All About Android. Matteo, Doni, thank you so much for hopping on. I'm sorry it's been so long. We got to have you back sooner than we did this time. We failed. We dropped the ball. But it's always awesome getting you on the show. Thank you.
Great. As a sports ball enthusiast who saw Italy win at penalties today, I'm happy to be back on All About Android. So thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed. YouTube.com/TechTravelGeeks. Is that where you want to point people to? And I guess if you have anything that you're working on, go for it. Let us know.
Yes. YouTube seems to be the main channel we're creating content from on Tech Travel Geeks at the moment. You can follow me on Twitter. Todoleo is my handle. Same on Instagram. And we cover tech and consumer electronics that we believe makes the travel experience better. Obviously, in the last year or so, we haven't been doing much travel, but hopefully that will be starting again soon.
Yes.
So Tech Travel Geeks, we cover a lot of mobile because nowadays, whether you're boarding a plane, ferry, train, there seems to be an app or a service that makes the travel experience slightly less of an issue. And on Sundays, we tend to do Drone Sunday videos where at the moment we're traveling around Scotland, taking footage of the lovely countryside and shores, and occasionally a few distilleries if they're in drone sight.
That's some really great footage you got going on.
I know. I'm just like, oh my God, I need a vacation.
Yeah.
So this is Lukash's latest Drone Sunday video. He's the Chief Aperture Officer at Tech Travel Geeks. He specializes in cameras and the videography of the channel. So
yeah, it looks great.
Great video there from Lukash.
Yeah, looks fantastic. YouTube.com/TechTravelGeeks. Thank you, Matteo. And Matteo will be sticking around after the show to do some Q&A with me in the post-show. So, you've got reasons to check out when we do the show live, or I'll talk about Club Twit in a second. But it'll be there, too. Flo, what you got going on?
Flowrights.tech. That'll take you to my Gizmodo author page. That's where you'll find all my latest work. And I'm just working on reviews and news, and you know where to find me and you know where to listen to me. And thank you for your support.
Yes, indeed. Support the flow. Oh, that flow. Thank you, Flo.
Thank you.
Big thanks to Burke here in the studio for being an awesome guy and wrestling with the TriCaster when it breaks down on us from time to time.
And not the fun kind of wrestling.
Keys. No, definitely not the fun kind of wrestling. It's some ugly wrestling. It's like I hit 2 keys and now the TriCaster is not working anymore. And that doesn't make any sense. But that's what happens sometimes. And Burke's there to fix it. Also, big thanks tonight. Normally we would be thanking Victor for editing, but Victor is not doing that this evening. But Anthony is. So thank you, Anthony, for editing the show and pushing it out to all the folks who subscribe.
And don't forget, let's thank John Ashley.
And John Ashley for creating the highly sophisticated Matteo's and Flo's Hardware Shack bumper. Thank you, John, for that as well. Thank you very much, John. Thanks for the reminder on that, Bert.
Thank you, John.
Sharing is caring.
As for me, just doing shows this week, and then actually, so I've got Tech News Weekly on Thursday, and then Friday I hit the road on my vacation, going up through Oregon and stuff with the family. So I won't be on the next 2 episodes of All About Android. Next week's actually going to be a little strange because Ron and I both are going to be gone, but we can say, because it's confirmed, that it's going to be Material Invades All About Android.
Yes, it is. It is. It's me and Andy are going to be here. So
that's awesome.
Don't change the dial. It's just Material Invades All About Android.
Love it.
And then you can listen to me and Andy and the Material podcast.
Yes, I love it.
I hope you like us.
I'm so looking forward to that. I think that's great.
This sounds great.
I have no idea what's
Is Andy going to be in a library?
I'm sorry?
Is Andy going to be in a library?
No, unfortunately, he won't. I don't think they've opened it yet since COVID.
Oh, that's a shame.
But once they do, you better believe Andy's going to be doing all of his shows from a library going forward. I don't actually know that. But that'll be awesome. And so make sure and check that out. But you're already subscribed. You don't have to worry about making sure about that. It'll just appear for you. But I should mention Club TWiT. Like I mentioned before, it's this awesome thing that we do here at TWiT where if you don't want to hear the ads in our shows, you can subscribe to Club TWiT. It's our ad-free subscription tier. All of our shows ad-free. Also an exclusive TWiT Plus podcast feed. We put lots of extra content into that feed, including tonight's chat. Matteo and I are going to be hanging out with folks from the Discord and from the IRC chat room, just answering any questions, hanging out, chilling, whatever, for 30 minutes. And we're going to put that into the TWiT Plus podcast feed. So that's the sort of stuff that you can look forward to there. And then we also have, like I mentioned, that Discord channel, which you get exclusive access to. Pretty awesome stuff. $7 a month. And we're just having a lot of fun with it. So check it out. twit.tv/club TWiT. That is it for this week's episode of All About Android. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We publish this show every Tuesday evening. twit.tv/AAA is the place to go to do that. And we'll see you next time on All About Android. Bye, everybody.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you are interested in checking out all things smart home and Internet of Things, then you should check out Smart Tech Today, the podcast I, Micah Sargent, do with my co-host Matthew Casanelli. It's all about the smart home and improving your automations.